Good evening, all members of the council, members of OSMC, officers, members of the press, and members of the public who may be watching. My name is Councillor Alan Law. I'm the chairman of the Overview and Scrutiny Management Commission, West Berkshire Council. I'm not going to go through all the other 8 members of the OSMC who are here tonight. You can see their names on the screen. But we are also supported by officers, and we have members of the executive here this evening as well, led by the leader, Councillor Lynn Doherty, and the head of the chief executive, Nick Carter. I saw him sometime or other, there he is again. Nick Carter is here as well. So I am going to go straight, with a busy agenda tonight, so I'm going to go straight into the beginning of the agenda. And item 1 is apologies for absence. Gordon, do we have any?
The only apology I have is Councillor Garth Simpson and Councillor Claire Rolls is substituting.
And Claire Rolls is substituting. Thank you very much. I don't see, yeah, I do see Claire. Thank you. Okay. Then the second item on the agenda is approval of the minutes of the last meeting held on the 6th of October. Has anybody got any comments at all? If you have, can you put your blue hand up, please, or wave at me if you have any comments on those minutes. I don't see any. I personally have one comment. Said he, as he's trying to find it. And I believe it was, yes, it was an action. Councillor Dillon asked, when we were talking about shared services, he noted that he would like to see more explanation from IT around the barriers to shared services. That did not come up on any of the actions. Could we note that, and could we defer that, please, or refer it rather than defer? Could we refer that, please, to the digital task group? We're happy to do that. Thank you very much. So can someone give me a proposal to accept the minutes, please?
Happy to.
That's Councillor Cole, seconder for that.
Yeah, Chairman.
Councillor Dillon, fine, thank you. All those in favour, just wave your hand. Okay, I think I've got Councillor Macko, but you probably weren't at the last meeting yet. I think I've got a majority on that. Thank you very much. In fact, I think I've got a unanimous majority on that. So the minutes are approved. I will sign the minutes at the next opportunity and forward them to the office. Right. Declarations of interest. Has anyone got any declarations of interest this evening? I see a couple of hands. Councillor Vickers first.
2 declarations. I'm a member of Newbury Town Council, and the London Road Industrial Estate is very much part of our town, and we have strong views on it. I'm also the ward member for Wash Common. Again, it's closely linked with Wash Common because of the plans to re-provision football. So I might be influenced by that.
Well, that's just simply in your role as a councillor, isn't it? There's
well, I just thought I should point that out for openness and for the sake of
okay. Well, I think there's a lot of us in the same boat.
I trust with what I say.
Okay. Councillor Dillon, you have your hand up as well?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just in relation to item 8, the draft housing strategy, obviously I work for the largest social housing provider in West Berkshire, and I know that we responded to the consultation. I have one comment, Mr. Chairman, that, well, I have lots of comments that I think some of them aren't appropriate to make. When we do get onto it, I have one comment which is just of a factual nature, nothing to do with the housing strategy per se, and then after that I won't take part or comment on the debate, Mr. Chairman.
Fine, thank you very much. Councillor Patton, and I have your hand up as well.
Yeah, also a member of Newbury Town Council, as with Councillor Vickers. So I just wanted to highlight that in view of the London Road debate to take place.
Fine, thank you very much. Okay, just a moment. I've got people coming in with a chat. No, nothing. It says Gareth is just coming in. Okay, fine, thank you. It's Councillor Hurley. That's declarations of interest. Do we have, Gordon, do we have any petitions?
No petitions.
No petitions. So having no petition, we will go straight on to item 6, which is the first of the significant items tonight, which is the call in by 5 members as a result of the executive report and recommendations on the London Road Industrial Estate project. What I'm going to do, if I may just give a little bit of a preamble, I'm going to ask the portfolio member, Councillor Ross McKinnon, just to give a quick overview, no more than 2 or 3 minutes, of what the decision taken at executive was. And then we're going to go into the members who called that decision in and to hear their arguments. Once they're done, I will also go then back to the executive members to respond to those arguments. And once that's finished, I'm going to open it up to other members to either make comments or ask questions of either the call-in members or the executive members. And following that, go to the vote. I would ask members if they could be concise. There's always a danger in these things that they become very repetitive. If things are going to go on longer and be repetitive, I'm going to use my authority here as chairman to try and curtail that. At council, of course, we'd always be restricted to either, depending on the topic, to either 5 or 10 minutes each. There's no such limits in OSFC, but I would appreciate if you could all respect a kind of a 5-minute unofficial per member. I'd really appreciate that. So with no more to do, over to Councillor McKinnon, if you could just tell us what exactly the executive decided back in December, please.
Yeah, no problem, Chairman. Can you hear me okay?
Absolutely.
Okay, brilliant. The meeting on the 17th of December, the executive considered the different options for progressing the regeneration of the estates following the publication of the final development brief prepared by Avis and Young. We chose a phased approach to the development in order to minimise the overall financial and strategic risks to the council. The objectives of the development were agreed at the meeting as being a mixed-use development, recognising that this is an economic development-led development and high-quality regeneration is of equal importance to financial return, and that in turn we would enhance the economic activity of the site. It was a Conservative manifesto commitment in 2019 to invest in infrastructure and ensure that West Berkshire is attractive to the business community. We want to ensure employment opportunities for local residents, attract inward investment and enable existing businesses to thrive and to grow. The executive also decided to commission a supplementary planning document or equivalent to better align the proposal with planning policy, to analyse the statewide design criteria and infrastructure requirements. Budgetary provision of £45,000 in year was made to fund feasibility studies and communications with estate stakeholders, as well as agreeing an ongoing annual budget of £100,000 over the next 3 years to provide specialist consultancy support during the project development to complement the already strong project management internal to the council. This will provide specialist project management support, including site master planning, site appraisals for individual plots, market testing, legal support, planning consultancy, environmental advice, and more. Those are the decisions that were made by the executive on the 17th of December, which bring us here this evening.
Yes, thank you. Thank you very much indeed, Councillor. I'd like just a message. Gordon has sent me a little message. Yes, Gordon, I missed that item. I'll go back to it after this one. Okay, the call-in. Who's leading off on that? Councillor Dillon, Councillor Brooks?
Yeah, so thank you, Mr. Chairman. Sorry, let me just bring my notes up on the other machine. So the use of a call-in can be used by the opposition every time a decision obviously is made. But from your time on the council, you'll know that we use it in a very limited way. And we're using that mechanism tonight because we want to be satisfied on behalf of the public that the portfolio holders and the administration that they've considered the unique circumstances that we're working in here, and to give us the confidence that they have the adequate provisions within the council structures in place to be able to manage it as well. Now, before we go into the reasons for the call-in, I just want to be clear and on record, we are in favour of redeveloping the council's owned assets on London Road. And we do want to proceed without delay, but without undue delay. And from the papers that came to the executive meeting on the 17th of December, we've pulled out within our letter just 4 areas where we felt that we needed more, as I said, confidence and to see it documented in terms of how this project, a big project for West Berkshire Council, will be delivered in this period of uncertainty and additional risk that we face. So to help business along, Mr. Chairman, Councillor Brooks is going to speak on item 1 of our letter. Councillor Vickers is going to speak on items 2 and 3, and then I'll address point 4. Members and chairman, you'll note that in the papers it sets out then a recommended course of action. Obviously, I think that's partly dependent on what we hear from portfolio holders tonight. And also, can I just say in advance, thank you to councillors Cole and McKinnon for providing some written answers for us to be able to look through as well. So with that, Mr. Chairman, I'm happy to hand over to Councillor Brooks to talk on item 1.
Fine, thank you.
Thank you.
Brooks.
Thank you, Chairman. I draw your attention firstly to 5.11 in the report. And although it may have been corrected, I'd like to put on record that that is factually wrong. The London Road Development Project Board meets regularly, includes portfolio holder with responsibility for economic development, as well as another executive member and leader of the Liberal Democrat opposition, which of course is wrong because we were thrown off that body. But the thrust of my point is relating to 5.13. The council, the executive, say that they will introduce a dedicated lead project officer. They say the project sponsor will be Joseph Holmes, Executive Director of Resources. So that in itself cannot be a full-time role, of course, because Joseph Holmes has a large portfolio, a department, and member lead, who again is like a non-executive role. So there's no mention of a project manager, part-time, dedicated or otherwise. And yet Councillor McKinnon has told us that any spending this year will be complemented by strong project management from in the council. Well, 5.13 does not give me any confidence that there is strong project management in the council that is being brought to bear on this project. And a project lead officer is not a project manager. And I understand who the executive, the administration are looking to put in that role. And that person has said in the past that a project lead officer is exactly what he or she is, certainly not a project manager. And so I take you back necessarily to, Chairman, the OSMC review of what had gone wrong in the first effort and attempt to build out and develop the London Road Industrial Estate.
It's a hot water bottle, that's full of hot water.
Was there a comment I should have received there?
Oh, it was a spurious comment on something to do with a hot water bottle. I don't know who that came
I think it was Gabrielle Mancini, who put herself on mute, but I hope she's...
I don't think she was referring to you, Councillor Brooks.
Well, I don't know. I'm a cold old buff sometimes, but I hope she's nice and warm. So if I take you back to that review, the report said, and this was cross-party, that there was a problem with project methodology or the lack of it, that there was a problem with the project management input from the council and the experience thereof. In fact, there were also problems in document control because we couldn't find all the documents we needed. So I contend, and supported by evidence, that we don't really have the project management expertise in-house for a multi-million-pound project of this size. And it's all very well to say we will have a partner in Avison Young and others, and they will look after us. But I want people to remember, and I'm sure they will agree, that a commercial organization, however partnery it tells you it is, has a bottom line and its own interests to look after. And what I don't see is who we have with strong project management experience of this type of development, not precisely the same, but a large multi-million-pound development on our side of the equation, looking after our interests, having the savvy, the experience, the knowledge, the professional qualifications so to do, and to protect the interests of the council and thereby the residents. Professional project management. And therefore we contend that Councillor McKinnon should be spending more than his £100,000 a year, because on all the resources he thinks he will be getting for that, it won't buy him much in the way of project management expertise. To up that figure so that he reduces tremendous potential, tremendous risk in the council having another real problem on its hands in developing this. It's not an unreasonable thing. We are looking, because we have not seen in his report that project management is really clear and dedicated from this good, capable, strong project management in the council. We do not see it in this report. And we look for a project manager coming in to mentor, to shadow, to support and protect the council's interests. And that isn't there, sir. And that is why on point one, we are very steadfast in saying there's a problem there. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Brooks. Next, I believe, is Councillor Vickers. Is that correct, Councillor?
Yes, thank you, Chairman. My role in this debate is to put the case points 2 and 3 in our call-in letter. So in a little over 5 minutes, I'm a rather wordy person. If you'll indulge me and take time off in lieu from anything that's left over from my colleagues, I think I have their agreement. But I hope to explain why we think there must be seen to exist a stronger Chinese wall between the planning authority and the landlord, and why the executive's proposed phased approach to redevelopment carries unacceptable risks unless there is first a thorough environmental impact assessment of the whole site. Now, the case became a lot clearer only yesterday when I got round to reading a set of heavily redacted documents obtained by someone unknown, but almost certainly from Sport England by an FOI request, and passed to me over this weekend. But it is also helped by the excellent Avison Young report to the executive. Now, the last email to Sport England from somebody probably very senior in this council said, quite rightly, that local government has to be a driver for economic growth and community benefit. And this was the council's final answer to Sport England's final statement of its position after a fruitless 4-month-long attempt in late 2014 to come to a mutually satisfactory position on the future of football in Newbury, in which they said, "We most strongly object and will use any means at our disposal to protect this playing field and its associated facilities on site." This was said in an email that was part of pre-application planning discussions with key parties, presumably arranged through our own planning service. At a meeting in late October that year, which proved to be the last face-to-face encounter for some years between the council and Sport England, the meeting's notes say that St Modwyn, then our developer partner, was intending to submit an outline planning application a year later, which would include provision for football. St Modwyn wanted more housing in the mixed development to pay for keeping the football facilities, but planning insisted that more housing would compromise the site's protected employment area status.
Councillor, may I just interrupt you for a moment? I'm hearing a lot about the football pitch, and yet that was not the topic on which the executive commented on, or the report.
I understood, but where be the chairman?
Excuse me, let me finish, please.
All right, sorry.
I don't see any of this in your 4 call-in points. So I'd ask you to try to not to diverge into yet another controversial discussion on the football ground. I'm failing to see where the relationship is, and maybe you'll get to there.
I will. Yes.
So far, well,
very soon.
Let me tell you what I'm thinking. I'm failing to see what this has got to do with Chinese walls in planning.
It's got to do with both of them, and I hope that within 2 or 3 paragraphs only.
Go ahead then.
Okay, so compromising the site's protected employment area status, I said. So yeah, only back in July that year discussions have begun with a blunt statement from the council that regeneration of the LRI is not viable unless football goes. And Sport England then set out the MPPF requirement, which was para 75 then, but now para 97, which if anything is stronger because it requires an applicant to replace and fund facilities to the standard of current or former use of the site. Now it's where this football ground is on the LRIE that is important, Chairman, because we now know from the Avison Young report that underneath it lies a large part of contamination. The reason it's higher than the rest of the site is because it's built out of landfill. Okay, now until we know the nature of that landfill, the whole plan for the phasing to start with building on a football pitch, which incidentally is the only significant piece of GI in the whole area. And our policy says we must maintain and enhance GI. And if you start a redevelopment by getting rid of the only bit of GI there is, you are facing a big planning problem.
Councillor, Councillor, let me just interrupt.
Have you now seen the link?
No, I don't actually.
Involved 6 years ago.
I don't see where the Chinese walls that you've complained about come into this debate. Can you?
Well, because there were senior members of the planning service at a meeting, it would seem from these redacted notes. There are no names, but it's clear that it was part of pre-application discussions, which always involves planners.
Yes.
The planning service of Scotland, so presumably we had a planner there, and we seem to have, and I don't know who the individuals were on our side, we seem to have some predisposition towards our policy approach to the area, and yet we do not yet have a supplementary planning document. So what I feel, coming to the crunch of what was in our call-in, we don't doubt the integrity of our officers, but perceptions are reality, Chairman. And in the light of past dealings with a key stakeholder, i.e. Sport England, and statements about housing and its role in redeveloping LRIE, that now, in the light of Faraday Plaza, must be called into question, where the only reason, and this went to appeal and was heard by our planning inspector, who accepted that a site which offers a 10-fold increase in employment and 160 houses can be allowed on a protected employment area. And that's exactly what Avison Young is proposing anyway in the master plan that this council has accepted. And we go along with that. And going back to that statement by a senior officer of what the council, what local government is for, we have foregone what I estimate to be £1 million of additional local tax revenue every year since Faraday Plaza, as it was initially called, now Gateway Plaza.
Councillor, I really got to stop you there.
So if we're after economic...
Sorry, I'm really going to stop you there, because Faraday Plaza lost revenue has got absolutely nothing to do with the executive report on the future LRIE project, which you called in, because there's no mention of Faraday Plaza, no mention of anything of this at all. You're trying to go back over old ground. You may, I know you feel strongly about it. There may even be in the remotest of time valid points, but they are not relevant to this debate tonight. So I want you to stop that. Could we now address the phasing, please? Can you now go on to phasing, which was your other topic?
Well, I've said, Chairman, that the phasing relies entirely on redeveloping the football ground first. The football ground is the only piece of GI in the LRIE. And if you develop on the football ground, you are immediately, apparently, in breach of planning policy. So we want to see the SPD produced, but we want to see in parallel with that a thorough environmental impact assessment of the whole site, so that we know where the risks are, under the ground, over the ground, and with planning policy risks, which are serious. And if anything, we want the council to be even more ambitious, have a more intensive development, more housing to pay for the football ground to stay. So the whole approach, the particular phasing arrangement that is proposed, we think is flawed. So okay. The EIA, make sure that we've got the Chinese wall in planning, and then we'll be happy.
Okay, is that it? Thank you. Councillor Dillon, are you going to finish?
Yeah, so I'm going to talk to point 4, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you.
So this was in our letter addressed as a lack of clarity of the market for both office space and flats, as the longer term ramifications of the pandemic are not yet understood. Now, Councillor McKinnon, I appreciate that almost this type of claim could be made whenever a major project is starting out in terms of crystal ball. However, we have never dared to start a project in such changing times. So the pandemic, and we put that particular in there in the call-in letter, does give us cause for concern on multiple fronts. It's caused approximately 1/3 of the world's population to live in some sort of quarantine. Here at home, we've had restrictions imposed to stop the spread of the virus. And obviously it's forced us all to change the way we live and operate. Look at us all this evening, for example. If you go out to Savills Global Sentiment Survey, they did some research with 31 different countries around the world. 84% of those responding saying they expected home working to somewhat increase, and the other 16% saying that it was going to greatly increase. And over half of those expect video conferencing to greatly increase after the pandemic. We know that many companies have allowed flexible working from home for many years before the pandemic. But actually what we've seen is that COVID-19 has been that catalyst for accelerating flexible working. The other COVID related impact on London Road is of course the economic downturn that COVID has caused. And we see in the IMF latest reports that a recovery, but nowhere near previous levels, and still 9 points below the 2016 baseline. So that will have an impact in recession in terms of ongoing office space need. We often find during a recession, if you go through the cycles, that obviously companies retract, they take on less staff, they need less office space. So we think that when the economy fully recovers, as it will do, and when people return to the office, as they will do, it will result in a new normal. There will actually potentially be more office space needed, replacing the previous trend of increasing desk density in offices. And for businesses, obviously, they're going to have to strike that balance. But I think we can admit that home working is likely to significantly increase. Then looking at housing and housing mix, the documentation talks about a mixed use site. It keeps it very generic. It just says mixed housing, doesn't really go into any more detail than that. However, we would know that to get the units that needed on a site like that, you would have to have flats. And we have also seen price rises positively correlate to size since COVID. So the size or the value of a 1-bed flat has slipped since the market reopened. According to Zoopla, the time taken between average listings of homes is direct again in correlation to the size of their properties. So what we're saying, Ross, and look, your report, so Councillor McKinnon, look, the report talks about the need for a phased approach. But what it doesn't do is it doesn't pull out these type of risks. And these were known when it went to the executive on the 19th. And I think more weight should be put to those and the potential risk that just gives the whole project in us making sure that we have something successful and that's fit for the future, is fit for our community in the future. And those greater challenges we felt should have had some more weight. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you very much, Lee. Thank you, Councillor Dillon. So members, we have the 4 points that have just been made. Concerns about project management expertise, concerns about Chinese walls and lack of confidence between planning and development, concerns about the proposed phase approach rather than wait until you have a more comprehensive environment assessment, and concerns about lack of clarity of the market going forward. So I would like to ask either Councillor Brooks, yes, before I move on, go ahead.
Thank you very much, because I'm looking for Councillor McKinnon in his response to just clarify, please. He said earlier that £100,000 have been set aside for various support. including, I think I heard him say project management, but if I read 5.8 in the document, there is no specific statement in there about project management. If he looks at it himself now, it talks about site master planning, legal, market advice, planning consultancy. I'd like clarity on that, please.
That's fine. I think
within the context of what I'm pressing for. Thank you.
I think it made that clear earlier, but okay, thank you for reiterating that. So I'm going to call either Councillor McKinnon or Councillor Coles to come. Who wants to go first? I think probably Ross. You've got the biggest weight there and the heaviest lifting. Go ahead.
Thanks, Chairman. Yep, and thank you to the members for their comments there. Okay, let's deal with the first one, the project management complaints that we heard. Councillor Brooks brought up the removal of the Liberal Democrat member from the board. I wasn't going to, but seeing that he did, I'll just comment that the Liberal Democrats were removed from the board because they could not refrain from publicly undermining the board they were supposed to be a part of. That is old ground, but it's worth mentioning again tonight because it was brought up.
Point of order, Mr. Chairman. It's just the word undermining is a subjective word. You know, Ross thinks we undermined it, whereas actually once the decision was public, we outlined a different way of doing it. I don't know. It's just the word undermine there. It's just the connotation to it.
I think there's been a couple of words that I could challenge tonight. So just your point's made, but I'm going to let it go. Go ahead, Ross.
Thank you, Chairman. Councillor Brooks, 5.8 in the document. Yes, I've got it in front of me here. There's a list of bullet points. And well, all I can say is that over the next, over the short term, over the next couple of years, that is the project. All of those points are related to the project management because that's what the project's going to do. So I would just put your mind at rest on that score.
You don't.
Councillor Brooks, I was listening with interest and anticipation to your comments, and all I heard was that project lead officer is not a project manager. And I was thinking to myself, what is that it? Semantics about job titles. I was waiting for some more, but there wasn't much there. I was embarrassed, to be honest.
Don't give me that. You've been learning from Gordon London.
I'll tell you what's more embarrassing.
Who's got the title manager?
Excuse me,
title manager. Who's managing the ship?
Councillor Brooks, you've made the point. You know, there's many times.
I don't need the condescension, Chairman.
Yeah, well, you just
the disappointment.
You're going to have the last word on this later on. So just leave it, please, Councillor Brooks. Councillor McKinnon, sorry.
Thank you. I was, and I'll tell you what I found even more astonishing. This argument about project management being made, despite the council implementing the task group, which was Liberal Democrat represented, of course, implementing their representations, their recommendations, establishing a corporate programme office, and the very paper they've called in, allocating £100,000 budget per year to support our existing project management. I mean, answers on a postcard on that one. On to the second submission from Councillor Vickers, the lack of confidence in the management structure and the lack of a Chinese wall. What we have here is an absolutely standard structure for development and planning. And I must admit, the executive's got full confidence in the professional integrity of the Council's Development and Planning Service. And we heard from Councillor Vickers that that's the case from their side as well, but we heard precious little of it. And I must admit, I struggled to follow much of what Councillor Vickers was saying. All I heard was the same old gripes about the historic project and the football ground, where we spent 5 minutes there on a journey through time to 2014. Now, again, I'm glad that's happened, so this public can see what we have to put up with here. But I found it remarkable that that was his submission. The second part of what he said was, of course, about the phased approach being inappropriate, rather than waiting for a full environmental assessment. I don't know if he's read my written submissions that are in the pack, but as I've already mentioned in there, as part of the consultancy work done in the preparation of the outline planning application, there's going to be a full environmental assessment of the proposed development undertaken before that happens. It's in there in black and white. It's like he's not read my comments at all. And finally, coming to Councillor Dillon's comments. Now, I'm glad, Councillor Dillon, that you did recognise the fact that you're never going to have perfect information. And to be fair to you, you mentioned that at the start. But these times of uncertainty, I take a completely different view about these are the times where we should be stopping. These are exactly the times we should be investing in our district's future, both with the town centre planning work that we're undertaking and the London Road regeneration. There are a myriad of business surveys that I could quote to back that up. In the last recession, we held our ground well, and a full recovery could be years off. I take your point about working from home, but I would point out that 55% of people working from home feel disconnected from their colleagues. I think there's going to be a hybrid model going forward, and I absolutely am confident in the demand for offices. And overall, you know, we hear all the time, and we've heard it from Councillor Dillon tonight, and I think Councillor Brooks, that the Liberal Democrats support the regeneration. But tonight, and historically, since I've been the portfolio holder, all we see is, well, it's the Tories doing it, so we don't like it, and we're going to be awkward. I'm afraid I have to take a different view to my Liberal Democrat colleagues here. Thanks, Chairman.
Thank you, Councillor McKinnon. Councillor Cole, do you want to?
Well, thank you, Chairman. I don't want to belabour this because Councillor McKinnon has said everything most eloquently.
Okay.
However, I also have to admit to being confused and bemused by Councillor Vickers' remarks. As he was referring to historical issues, he mentioned St Modwyn, Faraday Plaza, which has never been part of the London Road redevelopment project because it's separate from it. And all of those comments I feel were totally irrelevant and gave me the impression that he was somewhat clutching at straws because he had no sound basis for his arguments. But I would like to assure all members that there is a clear distinction between the council as a landowner and the council as a local planning authority. And to that extent that I was part of the London Road Industrial Estate Project Board when I also had responsibility for economic development. But this was passed over to Councillor McKinnon in recognition that there could be a conflict of interest, as I'm also portfolio holder for planning. And therefore, I wrote to Councillor McKinnon in the middle of December, saying to him that I would stand down as from the London Road Industrial Estate Project Board because I did not want to I had a conflict of interest, and I did not want to put the council in a position where my presence on that board was questioned. Thank you, Chairman. That's all I have to say. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Cole. Okay, I'd now like to open this up to the various members to either ask questions of the executive members, ask questions of the councillors who called this in, to make comments. So perhaps the best thing to do is, I suspect there'll be a number. Can you just put your hand up, please? The first one I've got here is Councillor Steve Masters. Councillor Masters.
Thank you, Chairman. I'm not going to get into the to and fro of, he said, she said, and whether or not this is political or not. But I would just like to make the comment that I welcome and support the call in, not for political point scoring, but because we should be seen to be transparent. And when it's a project of such local significance, we should be showing our council taxpayers, the members of the community, that we're, that everything's been done, above board and in a transparent and professional manner. And, there's lots of chest beating going on from people. This is democracy. A little bit of scrutiny is healthy for that democracy, and that's what we should be doing. So that's my comments. I don't think I've got anything further to add in terms of questions right now. But thank you very much, Chairman.
Thank you, Councillor Masters. Now I have Councillor Brooks and Councillor Vickers' hands up here, but if you bear with me, I'd like to, as I said, open it up to other members first, and then we can come back to you. Any other members wish to ask a question? No? Oh, Councillor Marino. Go ahead, Tom.
Yeah, thanks, Chairman. No, I just wanted to go back to Councillor Vickers for a second. Ari, the Chinese walls in the planning. Just wanted to ask, have you actually got any examples of the integrity of the planning and property, department not actually being adhered to in the past? And if so, what would you actually propose to sort of, improve it rather than just going on about it?
Councillor Vickers, you want to answer that? You're on mute, Councillor.
Sorry, yeah. I'd like to answer. I said I do not question the integrity of officers, but it's perceptions that matter. And when you have a project where the line management of the project officer through the economic development officer goes to the head of planning, then there is, I think, grounds for perceiving that there might be a conflict of interest, especially when there has been a long history of this site of certain positions being taken up, even during a pre-application discussion, which is all about planning. So, I mean, I would have a specific recommendation that might get around this. We have a new director of environment, who I can see her name down, although I can't see her face, but who's got no history of this development. And if the project board, those working on the outline planning application, whether they're in-house officers or whether they are planning consultancy brought in to do the job, which I think is what Councillor McKinnon is indicating, that through them that the reporting chain should go straight to the corporate director. A fresh pair of eyes is always good. I think that would overcome the perception. So I have no question of any particular officers or indeed of the whole planning service. You know, I think we've got an excellent planning service from top to bottom, but it's perceptions that matter.
Right, thank you. I've got a question or a comment from Councillor Rolls, please. Claire?
Thank you, Chairman. I have actually two questions, if I may.
Go ahead.
The first is to Councillor McKinnon. Can I just ask, so in the papers it says that where, in terms of the 100,000 annual budget that's been ring-fenced for extra resource, it says where the council does not have internal resources to provide the specific project resources. My interpretation of that is if we need to buy consultancy services for project management specifically, that some of that funding will that will be ring-fenced to do that. So it will enable us to buy in the expertise if we feel that we don't have that internally. That was my first question. Chairman, I don't know if you want me to wait for the answer to that or ask my second question, which is to Councillor Brooks.
Okay, let's get Councillor McKinnon to answer that one first, yeah?
Yeah, thanks, Councillor Rose. Your understanding is exactly correct. That's exactly what it means. Okay, so we have a budget there to bring in consultancy support, specialist support, as and when we need it, to complement the existing project manager. Spot on.
Thank you. Thank you, Chairman, and thank you, Councillor McKinnon. Can I direct my question to Councillor Brooks? As he knows, I was also on the task force for the London Road Industrial Estate, and we scrutinised this at length, and it was agreed that there was project management lacking, which the executive has acknowledged and addressed. My question is, we have addressed that. We have a corporate programme office. Councillor McKinnon has confirmed that there's dedicated budget to buy in that consultancy resource if we need it. My question to him, in this age when the public are incredibly, I think, scrutinising consultancy fees that we are spending, what more does Councillor Brooks expect us to do? Because I'm just interested in his comment that he didn't think that was enough money to spend on consultancy fees. You mentioned that you didn't feel the 100k would be enough. So I'm mindful of the public purse in terms of limiting that. And also, what more would you do? I'm not quite clear. Thank you. Councillor Brooks.
Well, I'll answer questions I want to, I think, Chairman, because I don't think I'm necessarily a consultant in here, but I will respond to Councillor Rolls. We've got a lot of time for. I am surprised that Councillor McKinnon decided to be so dismissive of this call-in and personally rather gratuitously insulting to the comments I made. I get on well with Councillor McKinnon if I speak to him outside of meetings, but he seems to turn into some sort of condescending Rottweiler in meetings like this, which is totally unnecessary.
Okay, can we answer?
It's not.
Can we answer Councillor Rolls' question to you, please?
Well, when I want to, I have my hand.
No. Well, not when you want to, Councillor.
Oh, hold on, Chairman. Forgive me. I thought you called me for my broader points.
I answer
that question.
Well, then, if there's been a miscommunication, let me reiterate what I said. I had two hands up from Councillor Vickers and yourself before the questions were asked, and I said I'd go into the other members' questions first, and then you'll.
Okay. I'm happy to be steered by you, Chairman. And
thank you. I appreciate that. So could
the sort of prices the day rates for consultants, and Councillor Rolls will know this, you get about perhaps maybe 50 days consultancy for £100,000 in a year. And that's an awful lot of areas to cover for 50 days and nowhere near enough to cover the project management that we require. Now, later, if you call me back, and I hope you will, I will talk again about project management and Councillor McKinnon, and I won't criticise him again because, you know, he's a likeable man in the right forum. But I hope that answers Councillor Rolls' question.
Councillor Rolls, you happy?
I'm just not quite clear what more we can do. That was my only other part to the question.
Well, let me answer again. Put another £100,000 in there for specialist project management support.
Okay. Any other questions? Let me just check on my blue hands. I did have Councillor Doherty's hand up, but I don't see it anymore. Was that Councillor Doherty? Did you wish to ask a question, make a comment?
I see Councillor Cole's waiting to come in there, Councillor.
I do indeed. Yeah,
I was, but I was going to let the actual committee member speak first.
okay, well, I'll do Councillor Cole's now. I'll come back. Councillor Cole, James Cole, and I'll come back to you. James.
Thank you, Chairman. I too was on that task group. To my mind, what we established at the time about the past was legitimate criticism. It was painful for some. I also think that where the council is now, we may have talked about a project methodology. Now we use it. That's quite a difference. There is a project office. It works. The council's moved on. And so I am in no way as unhappy as Councillor Brooks over the council's ability to manage this project. We know that money will be required for it, but I don't think it's quite as he is suggesting. So I do not accept what he says. You've asked for a comment, I give a comment. Would you like me to comment on another one?
It's up to you, go ahead, quick.
This question of the pandemic and Councillor Dillon's comments, I get the feeling that he would have us plan to do nothing for now. I cannot accept that. We're in a position where if we plan to do something, knowing what is changing, that yes, indeed, there may be less need for the current type of office space. We know that people will work more from home, but many will also go back to the office. I've been surprised at my own children choosing to go back to the office. And so it will be a different mix, but here we have in Newbury the ability to attract in the tech side. And I think it would be completely wrong to set aside this project now and say we're not going to do anything. We should be planning to do that now.
Okay.
The tech side is terribly important for Newbury.
Thank you, Councillor Cole. I've got Councillor Hurley. Gareth.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Two points, two observations, if I may. The first one is in response to Councillor Brooks, unsurprisingly, because it's had an awful lot of airtime this evening. What I'd say is it feels like I'm watching Mastermind with Councillor Brooks sitting in the hot seat with his specialist subject being project management, because that's all we seem to go on about here. But guess what? We also know a little bit about project management. In fact, that's what I do for a day job every single day. And I must admit, I disagree with Councillor Brooks fundamentally. You don't need someone with a job title called a project manager. You need someone who knows what they're doing. But actually, what's more important, and hopefully he'll agree, you need the right governance structure behind projects. That's what is fundamental to this, not the name of the individual, not their job title, not 16 project managers, because you can have 16 project managers running around and bumping into each other unless you have the right governance and decision-making structure, which is what I understand has now been put in place. I agree. There's a budget that's set out initially, and budgets maybe can be reviewed over time as part of progress. But I think it's a little bit of a red herring to talk about job titles. So I think we should move off from that one. The other one is in relation to item 4, in terms of the timing and the urgency of this. My personal view, again, in relation to my other day job, is West Berkshire Council needs to demonstrate that they're open for business. If you take your foot off the gas, if we take our foot off the gas in this, the money will go elsewhere. When things start opening up rather rapidly, because they will do, because as Councillor McKinnon said, people are desperate to get back into work. I know I am, and everyone I work with. If another town or city is more advanced, more forward thinking, companies will relocate elsewhere and will be left behind. So I think on both those points, really we need to get on with things, and we need to actually work collaboratively more together and make these things happen rather than sort of debate sort of minor petty things. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you, Councillor Hurley. I've got Councillor Macrow. Alan.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Going back to this issue of project management again. In the last few years, we had several projects running. We had the previous London Road Industrial Estate. We had 2 schools being built and the Market Street redevelopment. And our project management capability was stretched incredibly thin. And I'm very concerned that we might be making the same mistake again. Thank you.
Thank you very much indeed, Councillor. Councillor Marino, I think you've got your hand up again, have you?
Yeah, sorry, Chairman. Just another question, if you'll let me. Question for, I think.
I will. I think I'm going to draw them to a close now, but this is, let's hear it, please. Thank you.
Yeah, just a quick one for Councillor Dillon. I'm not going to go into specifics of, like, not being on it anymore, but when you were on the LRIE project board, I believe it's called, were any of the concerns referenced in the call-in actually ever raised by yourself when you were there? Just wanted to ask, just for, just in case.
That's to who? Councillor Dillon?
Councillor Dillon, yeah.
Thank you.
So I can't recall. Is the honest answer, Tom. I genuinely can't recall if they were raised there or not.
Okay, fair enough.
Fine. So I've got Councillor Brooks and Councillor Vickers that I'll go back to, but Councillor Doherty, as leader, had you anything you want to say or ask a question about?
Yeah, I just wanted to thank everybody for their contributions. It's an interesting thing to sit here and listen to. I think when we talk about scrutiny, I welcome scrutiny. I welcome scrutiny across the council. However, this must be one of the most scrutinised areas going, and it starts to feel as if it's the only area that there is any focus on. Yet I know that the council's working tirelessly to respond to a pandemic. So first of all, thank you to the officers for giving up their time here to yet again look at the scrutiny of this decision. I wanted to reiterate there are very key priorities here for this, and that is about employment and jobs for our residents. It's about inward investment into Newbury and into West Berkshire, and it's about enabling our businesses to thrive and grow. I completely disagree with Councillor Dillon's comments. I see them as more dither and delay. I'm an active member of a local enterprise partnership for the Thames Valley, working with businesses across the Thames Valley who have put together a recovery and renewal plan, which they'll be publishing very shortly. But having seen that recovery and renewal plan, the opportunities for infrastructure and infrastructure development are now, they are key. Just as our Conservative government is highlighting the need for infrastructure and build back better, now is the time to be doing so. This piece of work ties in very well with what we're doing with the town centre, and actually they complement one another, because one of the things we're looking at with the high street is how you ensure that the high street can thrive when there are potentially less offices, and actually having more offices around the high street and having residential development around the high street is only going to help our high streets going forward. I wanted to pick up on something Councillor Cole said, because we can all pick and choose which surveys we quote, and I think that's the interesting thing at the moment. But for me, one of the most telling articles was in the Wired.co.uk magazine that talked about the UK tech hubs, and it mentioned massive cities like like Manchester going forward. However, amongst those massive cities was Newbury, and it was highlighted that Newbury represents a growing tech-rich area, and now is the exact time in this post-pandemic area that we should be, when people are looking to work closer to home, that we should be making the very most of these opportunities. So far, all I've heard is that we will miss those opportunities if we wait around scrutinising this decision much more, and we should spend more money on resource that we've already got within the council. So I just want to say, I hope that this evening we can actually come to a conclusion here. I know that the OSMC spent many months reviewing 2014, and I've got no wish to go back to Councillor Vickers' comments going back to 2014 because it's covering old ground. I really had hoped that our opposition members would see this as a rich opportunity for the local economy here in West Berkshire to recover from this pandemic, and that we could work cross-party to see that happen. However, time and time again, I feel that that has not been the case, and I really hope that the decision tonight is to move forward with this project so that we can fulfil our ambition to be open for business, and residents of West Berkshire can be reassured that we are looking after local economy in the recovery process going forward.
Thank you very much, Councillor. I now have got Councillor Vickers, Councillor Brooks and Councillor Dillon to wrap up. If you
Thank
could,
you, Chairman.
Keep the responses short and sharp.
I'll keep it short. I would like to respond to Councillor Doherty, but that wasn't my intention when I put my hand up. I want to apologise to Councillor McKinnon for not acknowledging his very helpful statement, but bear in mind that we opposition members signed the call-in letter before we had the responding statements. So I'm very pleased to see that he is going to proceed with a thorough, detailed environmental impact assessment. But, you know, we'd already written that that's what we wanted. Just to take up with Cole, I'm looking at page 24 of the Averson Young Master Plan, and the Faraday Road, the land at Faraday Road, which is Gateway Plaza, is firmly within the red line. So it is part of the area that the council as landowner is still responsible for and will be having to do an environmental impact assessment of. But you might get a share of that funding from the developer at Faraday Plaza. Go for it. Let them proceed. Go for it. And as for going back over old ground, the scrutiny of this project has been primarily about project management. It's hardly been at all about the planning policy approach. What I was trying to outline is how planning policy has got in the way of achieving economic development, whereas it's supposed to, on this site in particular, aid it. Now, my final comment is that landlords as landlords cannot and do not create economic growth or wealth. They can only get in its way. In their entrepreneurial role, developers, builders, private industry, that's what creates growth. I thought Conservatives believed that. And yet for 10 years, we've had this project run by Conservatives that have stood in the way of economic growth, have stood in the way of £500,000 a year of lost revenue through council tax, of lost jobs that have not been created on this site. And it's
Councillor, I've got to ask you to stop because
let's get on and
we're getting
have some planning progress.
Yeah, we're getting repetitive here, Councillor. Councillor Brooks, Councillor Dillon, who wants to go first to close this off and make?
I'll go first and let Councillor Dillon summate, if I may, Chairman. And I think I'm introducing new points, sir. I think it's reasonable to allow me to respond to Councillor Hurley, who was rather dismissive in saying I'm putting myself as some kind of mastermind. In 1979-80, I was involved with a company called Learmonth Burchett Management Systems, LBMS. They developed LSDM and SSADM, out of which came Prince. I'm not a guru, Councillor Hurley, but I've been around the block quite a few times, sir. I'm sure you're a decent project manager. Perhaps you'd like to come and manage this project full time, because that's what's missing, you see, and I'm going to be extremely careful in what I say now, but I will ask Councillor Cole and Councillor Rolls to recollect one of the people who attended that task review, I will not name names, admitted to us that he or she could not be considered to be a project manager. And I have not seen anything in recent years that convinces me we have run a project on the scale of this development in the way that I'm being told all is fine now. We've got a methodology and everything is tickety-boo. And I've heard James Cole use that word before now. I've not seen it to be confident that we are reducing risk. And let me say to Councillor Doherty, we want to see this developed. You bet your life we do. But we want to reduce the risk because this has gone wrong before. And surely you want to reduce the risk as well. And now the dismissive nature of this call-in makes me feel like saying to my leader, let's call in everything. Because on the few occasions we do, we're treated as pariahs. So let's call in everything. We might as well. So let me finish, Chairman.
No, Councillor Brooks, no, I'm going to, bear with me, Councillor Brooks. I, as chairman, take a little bit of exception to that. No one tonight is treating anyone, no matter which party, whether they're from the executive, whether they're from the call-in group or what, but anyway, like pariahs. I would ask you to reconsider that remark.
I'll withdraw the word, but Chairman, I want you to know I feel the attitude to this call-in has been very dismissive, as if it's all politics, and it is not. If it was all politics, we'd be doing it every flipping week. So when we call it in, it's because we're very concerned, and all we are really asking is that they put more money in to reduce the risk by getting project management expertise, serious project management capability from outside this council to work on the side of the council and therefore the residents in reducing the risk. How can that be wrong? And how actually can that be political? Thank you, Chair.
I think they've heard you on that. Can we just draw that to a close, please, Councillor Dillon?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman. So just to summarise on a few other points that weren't necessarily picked out. Councillor Hurley talked about job titles, but job titles in a big organisation like West Berkshire do matter. And we have had a history in the past of poor matrix working, different departments working, and actually having that central figure, and somebody who isn't as busy as the executive director for resource heading that project up is, in our view, the right way to approach a project of this magnitude. And we don't see that role being created, regardless of its title. To be honest with you, we don't see that JD in there. In terms of COVID, as I said in my opening remarks, I know it's about gazing into the future, but actually, whether we have to have large office spaces to allow for this type of working or not, is going to depend on what your economic return is as well. And you have set the ambition to be around income generation and high quality regen project. So there is an impact there, and we're saying that we don't think that was called out enough in this initial brief. Leader of council, I have to take concern at, you said yet again this decision is being scrutinised. This is the first decision this decision is being scrutinised, Lynn. We scrutinised other parts of the process, but this decision was made by the executive on the 19th of December, or 17th of December, and we called it in tonight.
Apologies, Lee, I meant the London Road Industrial Estate project.
As a whole, yeah.
As a whole.
Yeah. And, you know, in terms of building back better, as the Conservative motto is, we want that as well. And that's why we're saying, and we were saying, obviously, before Councillor McKinnon responded with his letter, around this environmental impact assessment. Because actually, it's so important we get this right. We need to make sure the phasing's right. And if the phasing can't be delivered, as you say, then the economic argument of undeliverability of the site is put at great risk as well, particularly with that main trigger site being the green infrastructure. And so just to finish, Councillor Law, Mr. Chairman, that Councillor Vickers's main point in terms of that Chinese wall is basically we've got a chicken or egg situation with the phasing, but that is against our own policy. And at the moment, we are progressing down a line where we have the administration, in effect, asking for something which is against this council's own policy. And that's where we want to have that clear transparency. And that's what Councillor Vickers means by the Chinese wall. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you. And can I just, I think that overall, we've been able to tease out our 4 points and our concerns. I think people at home won't find them frivolous. I think that, you know, the right of calling in, the fact that Councillor McKinnon and Councillor Hilary Cole provided written responses to us that we were able to read were helpful, you know, and we've been able to take a bit more confidence from what we've seen in writing, and but it hasn't yet gone quite enough, you know, far enough for us to have that full confidence.
So I've got two ways of doing this. You can either make a proposal based on your call-in and have that seconded, and we'll put that to the vote. Or I can go as what the Constitution advises me, simply go and confirm that to have a vote which says OSMC as a whole concurs with the executive decision. So what do you want to do? Do you want to make a proposal, Councillor Dillon, or not?
Yeah, please.
Is your proposal therefore is as paragraph 2.2?
Yeah, I'm just trying to grab it up, but it's going to have to be in reality, isn't it?
The decision on the option should be paused until an environmental assessment of the entire site has been carried out, the fallout of the pandemic is more fully understood, and the appropriate project management structure and expertise is in place.
I think I would only just amend a word, Mr. Chairman, which is the COVID fully understood. It was too ambitious language even for us to put in there. It's just about calling out the COVID implications.
That's right. We can add if the minute taker can note that, the clerk note that, please. Put COVID
about better understood, Chairman, rather than fully understood.
Yeah. Yeah.
Fine. Can we have a seconder for that, please? That's Councillor Brooks. Okay. Now I'm going to go to the vote on that because we have a proposal. Before we vote, however, I'm entitled to vote. I've been very quiet. I've been trying to chair the debate. Let me tell you, you'll see how I'm going to vote, and let me give you a little bit of background to my reasoning. On the first one about project management, I actually find it a little bit strange, frankly, that a lot of the recommendations that came from OSMC on project management, which have now been put into effect. And I find it strange, as Councillor Cole mentioned, a lot of the criticism previously was all in the past. We have new structures, and I feel this is the first opportunity we've got to actually see these structures really working on a big project. And I find it therefore a little bit strange that we actually wouldn't go ahead. We'd try to undermine that. And in fact, you know, the commitment has been made to support those structures by professional outside consultants where appropriate. On the Chinese walls bit, I've fully experienced myself as twice portfolio holder for planning the Chinese walls. The officers would never let me do anything on development. And I never got anywhere near London Road or Market Street when I was portfolio holder on the 2 times I was there from 08 to 2012 and 2014 through to 2016. So I got personal experience that the Chinese walls and the integrity fully operate. And the last thing is really to Councillor Dillon's point about the market's a bit unclear. Well, it is. But that's a bloody good reason to have phased implementation, because I'm not sure anyone can say, well, we've got to wait 6 months, or we've got to wait 12 months, or we've got to wait 18 months. Let's just go ahead and do it in nice controlled phases. And that's my opinion. So you probably guess how I'm going to vote based on what I've just said. But if I could put the proposal, which is properly seconded, to the vote, which
sounds like I've got you in my column, Chairman.
I don't think so. But we have a properly and seconded proposal to pause the whole thing, and I'd ask that to go to the vote. So who's doing that vote for us? I guess it's Linda, is it?
I can do it, Chair.
Gordon, go ahead. Call the vote, please.
Can I have a show of hands for those who are for the proposal? One, two, three.
Yeah, Councillor Pattenden, I don't think you can vote. So you're a member of OSMC.
Sorry, two, you're right.
Can we just check how many have we got?
Councillor Vickers, Councillor Masters, Councillor Dillon, Councillor
Yeah,
Brooks.
and Councillor Brooks 4. Okay.
And can I have a show of hands for those who are opposed? One, two, three, four, five.
That's 5. Okay, fine.
That's 5 to 4 against.
So that proposal has not been carried. I now need a proposal to confirm that the executive can go ahead with the decision. Somebody like to propose that, please?
I would like to.
Oh, that's Councillor Cole. Councillor James Cole.
Councillor James Cole.
Do I have a seconder?
Yes, I'm happy to second.
Councillor Rolls. So this is a proposal that the OSMC concurs with the executive decision, and which will be implemented with immediate effect. So all those in favour of Gordon?
Yes, can I have a show of hands of those in favour? 1, 2, 3, 4,
5.
4 there. Is it? Oh, 5.
No,
Sorry,
5.
Sorry. Yes. And
I was
those
happy
against.
before.
And those against, please. 1, 2, 3, 4. That's 5 to 4.
So the motion is carried that we will refer the decision of the executive has been supported by OSMC. Thank you very much. Very interesting. I certainly personally enjoyed it. And now I'd like to, apparently I missed an item on the agenda, which was actions from previous meeting, item number 3, pages 15 to 16. Can we now go back to that, please? Gordon, do you want to take us through those?
Yeah, we have a few actions here, most of which have been completed. First action on there is an update on the New Ways of Working programme. This was scheduled to come to the next meeting, which is on a special meeting on the 9th of February, but we've had a request to actually defer this because the members of staff involved have actually been seconded onto COVID-related projects.
Okay.
The next item on there is action number 25, which is the ICT Digital Transformation Task Group. Councillor Marino was the chair of that. We just need to confirm how often the task group will meet and how they'll report back to OSMC.
Yeah, we just agreed there'd be a meeting shortly to have that on there.
Yeah, I've had confirmation from everyone that we're happy to meet as we're approaching the 6-month mark. So we'll do that and then we'll report back at the next full.
Okay. And then shared services report number 26, that's actions complete. 27 is complete.
27, by the way, I'd like to comment on 27. I find it extraordinary that you say details from individual employers are not available. My big question is why not? I mean, I would have thought that the chamber, somebody asked the Chamber of Commerce, who were the big 10, we'd get an answer. Failing that, ask the LEP. Failing that, go into benefits rates. Who are the big rate payers? I just don't accept the fact that the details weren't available. So we'll use 10 industries as a proxy. So Gordon, could you actually take that forward, please, to the next meeting?
Okay. Item 28, item 29, that's complete, and item 30 again complete.
Okay. Okay, thank you for that. We've done that. So I'll now move on to the next item, which is item 8 on the agenda, which is the housing strategy. So I will hand over to, I don't know if it's Councillor Cole or one of the officers leading off on this.
I'm doing an introduction, Chairman, and then I'm going to hand over to Janet Weeks, our housing manager, who is supported this evening by Gary Lugg, Head of Service, and Nick Capara, who is Housing Strategy Manager.
Okay.
We need...
Sorry, Oh, sorry, Councillor Cole, just because I declared an interest, so
Yes.
I'll leave. I've just got one question to ask, which I'll just do when I come back in, if it's okay, Mr. Chairman, even though
That's
obviously
fine.
the agenda item would have shifted on.
Yeah.
Is the protocol just to go off on video only, or will someone WhatsApp? Oh,
I think you just
someone
go-
can WhatsApp me when to come back in.
Well, I think we've had this before, and what happened was you just turn your audio off. There's absolutely no reason why you cannot watch the debate.
No. Yeah. Okay. Thank you, Chairman.
Councillor Cole, please. Hilary.
Thank you, Chairman. We need a strategic framework to deliver housing in the district. The housing strategy we currently have is extremely out of date, and this new strategy will take us to 2036. Whilst I acknowledge that some members have expressed their concern regarding the impact of COVID on the strategy, the issues raised could apply to any of our strategies. It's not wise to delay the implementation of the strategy because of COVID, as the full impact of it is still unknown and unquantifiable. The Council's robust response to the management of COVID within the district enables us to respond positively and in a timely manner to any new data and evidence as it arises, as the strategy will, in common with all our other strategies, be reviewed regularly. As you will see on page 76 of your agenda, which is page 20 of the strategy links into other council priorities and strategies as it is meant to do. We cannot enact strategies in isolation. For example, the housing team has worked closely with the environment team to ensure that the environment strategy is encapsulated within the housing strategy. Similarly, our emerging minerals and waste plan indicates the need for developers to look at alternative building methods which do not rely on the finite natural resource of sand and gravel. And this is reflected on page 18 of the strategy, page 74 of your agenda. I also want to draw members' attention to the consultation response and explain the response figures. Although the survey clearly stated, please read the draft strategy before you respond, this was ignored by the 477 people who initially logged off onto the survey and abandoned it after 30 seconds. Subsequently, 271 people read the strategy and responded. And I'm sorry for the confusion this has caused by the way in which it was originally reported. So to conclude, Chairman, it's important to get the strategy moving and adopted, and I trust it will have the support of the Overview and Scrutiny Management Commission. And said I'll hand over to Janet now, who'll take you through the detail. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you very much. Janet, go ahead.
Thank you, Chairman. Am I able to share my screen?
Well, I hope so.
Okay, bear with me. Can everybody see that? Thank you. Okay, so I just wanted to walk through a few topics here with regards to the background, context, and some of the challenges we faced, and concluding. So starting off with the new housing strategy, it's one document in terms of it being a strategy and a delivery plan. As Hilary has already mentioned within your papers, the strategy is enclosed and it was adopted back in the original strategy was adopted in 2010. The new strategy will obviously take over from this and take us up to the year 2036. The strategy and delivery plan will enable us to have clear timelines in terms of how we deliver the strategy. And with regards to the achievements from the strategy in 2010, that can also be found within the housing strategy, which is on page 87 of your papers. The strategy is basically a corporate strategy that we have to have as a priority. And when we started out on this work with the new strategy, we started by looking at what does housing mean to us. We had a peer review, and then that was followed by a strategy group meeting back in September 2019, that helped us to start the work on the strategy. And the strategy itself will also enable the council to set out future strategic plans. Although it's not a statutory requirement to have a strategy, it will enable us to do this. And it will also enable us to meet the statutory duties that we have to provide as a local authority. So moving through, in terms of the context, it is a high-level document and linked to other strategies. And if you were to look onto page 20 of the actual housing strategy, it does set out a diagram highlighting what the other strategies are that it links to. For example, the environmental strategy and the local plan, just as an example. The housing strategy, we had to actually do extensive consultation, and that ran for just over 6 weeks between the 18th of September to the 1st of November. And there were 271 responses that came through. The strategy looked at various things such as housing supply and demand in the affordable and private rented sector, demographics and changes, and also delivery of affordable housing, employment opportunities, welfare reform, homelessness, and environmental considerations. And a number of these came out of the consultation that we carried out. There's also a consultation report that has been appended to your papers that clearly sets out a summary of what we have been advised in terms of responses from members of the public. Next, in terms of the communications, so we had to ensure that we carried out extensive communications. And when I say communications, I mean communicating in a different way, not just using the website to communicate to everybody to get the responses back. So extensive communications was carried out by way of a communications plan. So it wasn't just the website, we also used social media. There's also a communications plan that has been attached to the papers that shows the extent of the communications that we did around the strategy. It is scheduled to go to March Executive for adoption, subject to obviously all the different boards and what happens here. And the headlines that came out from the consultation was around affordability, local residents asking about will they be able to afford properties that are being built in the district, environmental and climate considerations. As Hilary mentioned before, we work quite closely with the environmental team in terms of looking at the environmental considerations and also taking into account the responses that came in from the consultation around environmental and climate issues. And other things that came up was also around needing more affordable housing. In terms of challenges then, what we were faced with was how can we best influence the housing market in the district? What is it we can do? So again, that was addressed in the housing strategy. And asking the question about, is it just about building more homes? Well, clearly it isn't. And that's why we need the housing strategy so that we can set out strategic plans and plan for the future in terms of housing and working in the housing market and what's required. We also looked at obviously the challenges around the welfare reform. How can we mitigate that? And also, what are the needs of the residents locally? How can that be addressed? We also talked about trying to respond to ever-changing needs. And it's come up tonight already. One of the changes that we're all facing at the moment is COVID-19. And then obviously, how can we deliver the housing strategy? And obviously we answered that by ensuring that we've placed a delivery plan within the strategy to identify and to show how we propose to deliver the housing strategy. Two main priorities that's within the strategy are around the first priority, which is to enable every resident to have access to a home that meets their needs. And the second priority was around reducing homelessness. Now, in terms of a report that I submitted to yourselves, that's also appended, and that basically goes through what I've just summarised here for you. In conclusion, the housing strategy should be developed and taken forward, as it will enable the strategic planning for housing in the district. It also includes the key priorities and links to other strategies, and also includes a delivery plan to enable us to deliver within timescales, addressing risk and mitigation. Thank you, Chairman.
Oh, thank you. If you could get rid of that screen, please.
Yeah.
Okay, members, who's first? Who's going to ask questions, make comments? I've got Councillor Tony Vickers' hand up first. Tony, go ahead.
Thank you, Chairman. I must admit, first of all, that I've had not a lot of time to look at this strategy in its latest form. I was very impressed with the earlier draft and commented as such. Haven't looked to see whether my comments have been brought in, but I assure you they were all very constructive and not entirely critical at all. I just would like to ask officers, because there is a statement on page 9 of the strategy and 65 of the papers that we've got about the proportion of privately owned housing being 83%. And it struck me that this is not the same as owner occupation, and it's the private rented sector that is the fastest growing and owner occupation that is the fastest falling. And that increases a potential problem of insecurity of tenure, need for stability. So on page 79, I'm pleased to see that there's an action to incentivize private landlords to make arrangements, to make it possible for people who are homeless or are threatened with homelessness to retain their security. So could officers tell us what they're actually doing about that in some detail, targets and, what's in the delivery plan to address this, which is going to, I believe, be a continuing problem for all authorities. And, it's a national issue, but hopefully we've got some innovative measures up our sleeve.
Okay, who's going to answer that? Janet?
Thank you, Chairman. Thank you, Councillor Vickers. So please correct me if I've not got this right. Are you asking for additional information in terms of how we're going to deliver on the gap in the private rented sector, or are you asking something else? Sorry, you're on mute.
Just to be clear, what I saw in the previous version was that you have a serious resource issue in resourcing the additional posts needed to tackle some of these actions. And do you believe that resource issue is now resolved and that you'll be able to carry out the actions you aim to do? I haven't got that page in front of me, but I just remember that was one of my main comments in the previous version.
Thank you, Councillor Vickers. And yes, I can answer that. We have looked at the resourcing of the housing strategy, and we've equally submitted pressure bids so that throughout the life of the strategy, we will have sufficient resources to deliver what we set out.
And you're confident you'll get those resources, but we will see soon when the budget comes. All right.
That's it. Thank you. I've got Councillor Masters. Go ahead, Steve.
Thank you, Chairman. Thank you, Janet, for the presentation and the strategy document. There's lots of good points in, as Councillor Vickers has said about, I'd like to add in, about the environment. I don't know whether you necessarily be able to answer the questions I've got directly, so maybe Councillor Hilary Cole will probably be more of a conduit for the answers on some of them. You've had some really good success on the rough sleepers and the homeless front over the last 2 or 3 years, and that's all moving in, hopefully in the right direction. Do you see the need to continue asking for ongoing funding externally from the council in the manner that you've done in terms of the projects for mitigating that, those issues? That's my first question. And on the environment,
let's take them one at a time, Steve.
Yeah.
Answer that. Hilary?
if you're referring to external funding, Councillor Masters, we take every opportunity to apply for any government grants when the bid rounds come through, and we've been extremely successful in obtaining government funding, which has enabled us to do the work that we have. And I see no reason that for us not to continue to apply for any government funding should the bids be appropriate for us. In some respects, we've been almost victims of our own success, because some funding is not now available to us, but Janet and her team are constantly looking at funding that comes through. So I hope that gives you some assurance.
Thank you, Councillor Cole.
Question?
And yeah, on the environmental aspirations for the project, I know there's been much talk, between myself and Councillor Cole over the previous discussions about the need to enforce and get the developers to aspire to environmental standards that where they're not legally bound by at the moment. And I know that there's lots of plans to do that. Do you see having the teeth that you need to enforce stuff with your aspirations?
Can I answer that, Chairman? You're actually
go ahead.
You're actually touching on planning policy, Councillor Masters, and our new local plan, emerging local plan, is looking very closely at what is coming out of government. The building control survey, the results of that have been issued recently, and we have always committed to having a good standard of housing, given all things being equal. Had government not changed policy, we would now be operating BREEAM Standard Excellent or Code for Sustainable Homes to the highest standard. And we, as a local authority, are always very keen to promote that. But it's very much depends on what the central rules are, which doesn't give us much flexibility. But we always pursue as much as we can the need to have good quality, sustainable homes. It's always been important to us, and environmentally friendly. Thank you.
Thank you, Chairman.
Okay, thank you very much, Councillor Masters. I've got Councillor Cole and then Councillor Marino.
Thank you, Chairman. I'm on the environmental aspect as well. I did put in 3 sets of questions. I'm quite happy with the answers I got on 2 of them, but I'm not on the environmental aspect. I took the view, and I retain that view, that there should be a third main priority here. We declared a climate emergency, and that, well, as you mentioned, it's not part of our housing strategy. To me, it is absolutely intrinsic now to what we do. I won't vote against this paper, but I have a real problem with the fact that we do not make it a major priority. I'm not expecting a real answer to that. We simply differ.
Okay.
Chairman, I think I would agree with Councillor Cole that we do agree to differ on and I would again point out that our emerging local plan has really strengthened the policies with regard to the environment, and that will form and that will certainly and inform the housing strategy. But I think it is unnecessary for us to have a third theme because I think it will weaken the other 2 themes. Which
I think you both agree on the end product. You're just having a violent disagreement.
I think we are. I think that's right, Chairman.
As to how you violent agreement, by the way, is how you go about doing it. Councillor Marino, Tom.
Yeah, thank you, Chairman. Just 2 quick ones, really. On page 16 of the strategy, there's obviously the table about the number of disabled facilities grants. Just wondered if there was an explanation for why there's quite a large drop between 2015 and 2016 on that table.
Who's taking that one? Janet?
Janet.
I'll answer that. We didn't achieve, the two reasons really. We didn't achieve spend, and also the numbers of disabled facilities grants that came forward over that period were lower. So that were the two reasons for that period of time.
Okay. That it, Tom?
Then yeah, sorry, just it's really minor. Just at the top of page 13, it makes a reference to housing benefit and universal credit. I'm pretty sure those are both supposed to be capitalised, but that's really minor.
Okay, you're going to win the.
Thank you.
You're going to win the Jeff Beck Award for capitals and dots and commas. Okay, let me see. Anyone else? I've got Councillor Vickers and Councillor Masters. Are they still up from the previous, or is it? Oh, we got new questions, Councillor Vickers? No, Councillor Masters. Another question?
No, I'm fine, Chairman. Sorry.
Okay. Well, any other comments or anyone? Otherwise, we're kind of done. We've been asked actually. I mean, this is one of those occasions where we've again got ahead of. A little bit proactive because it hasn't been finally approved by the executive yet. And so this OSMC was to help give some advice and guidance to the housing team as they finalized their strategy. I personally found I was a portfolio holder for the previous strategy, and I got to say this one's much superior. I think it's very comprehensive. But I would have two things that I would, between now and you finally take this to executive, there are three things I think I'd like you just to take on board. You mentioned the council's joint venture delivery vehicle to contribute to the delivery of new homes, but you then don't say anything at all about that. And I think that's a little bit of a hole in your strategy. Now, I know it's maybe early days and whatnot, but I think you should say a little bit more about that. And similarly, with you talk about, we will deliver a council-owned housing company. And maybe that's even earlier days and what have you. But again, nothing more said about that in the strategy. And I think it may be, a paragraph or two just saying what the objectives and the aims of doing that would be. I think that would be very helpful. It's the only big hole I found in this. And finally, you won't be able to do this in time, but I got a little bit frustrated with the bottom of page 77, where it says, we will undertake research to identify the level of demand for affordable rent and discounted home ownership products from young people and key workers. The thing that jumped out at me was, why didn't you do this before you wrote the strategy? It would seem to me that this is going to, depending on the result of that research, I do hope, and I think you should say, depending on that result, I may amend part of the strategy or the delivery plan. I hope you would do that. And that's my only, those are my only comments. Members, unless anybody's got anything else to say on this, we're asked to note and recommend this. Can I just do that with a show of hands, please, for all the OSMC members? Can we all accept this and put this forward to the executive? Yeah, I think that's unanimous. Thank you very much, members. Thank you. Thank you, Hilary. Thank you, Janet. Right, the next item on the agenda is the...
So, Mr. Chairman, sorry, I think that Councillor Cole addressed the one issue I had in that report. I think I've
bring you back in again. Sorry, Councillor.
Sorry, that's okay. I think I caught it. Apologies, Hilary. I did go to get a bag of crisps. I think I heard you make reference to the 477 submitted feedback, but only 271 were viable.
Yeah,
I think you picked that up in your remarks, didn't you?
I did, Councillor Dillon, and I'll just repeat it for your benefit. 477 people logged on, and they all logged off within 30 seconds because they hadn't read the strategy before they logged on. Although it clearly said on the website, please read the draft strategy before you respond. So of that 477, 271 obviously read the strategy and responded to the consultation.
Good. Okay. And yeah, as I said, my point wasn't about the housing. It was just what lessons do we learn from that but you're great. Maybe
Well,
even bigger font
don't
on
know.
the.
I don't know what lessons we can learn, Councillor Dillon, if people don't read the instructions.
Yeah, no, I was wondering if it's going to be a form issue, and so could we, cut the form a different way? Hence, for
No,
raising it. But thank
they
you for your
logged on
answer.
and they just logged off very quickly, and then they went back in afterwards.
Okay.
Okay.
Fine. Thank you very much. Item 9 on the agenda, which is the revenue finance performance for Q2. I always find this one a bit frustrating because we just finished Q3, what, 2 or 3 weeks ago.
And Chairman, the other thing, of course, is from the OSMC members here are also shadow exec members. So, Lynn and Ross would have heard quite a lot of our comments on this report. So I would say that if members of the public want our views on it, they might want to listen to the recording on the 17th of December, unless unless our finance holder is going to tease out some additional stuff.
Well,
after, of course,
okay,
Ross
I'll
has
just go through
introduced
I'll go through the process and let the finance officers to make their comments. But I take it from what you've said, then we're going to be able to shorten the debate on this. Go ahead. Who's doing this? Is it Joseph? Joseph, are you introducing this paper?
I was going to let Councillor McKinnon.
Is it Ross? Okay.
I'm happy to if Councillor McKinnon doesn't want to.
Don't fight over it, you two now.
Be my guest, Joseph. The floor is yours.
Okay. Thank you very much, Councillor McKinnon. Thank you very much, Chairman. As other members have alluded to, this report was debated at Executive just before Christmas. But you can see there a growing underspend was forecast from the end of Q2 of around about £1.5 million, primarily driven within the People Directorate, with quite significant underspend forecast mainly here in respect of adult social care, and some of that due to the impact of the pandemic. What this also highlights as well is some of the substantial government funding as well that the council has received in respect of COVID-19, and which we continue to receive for the rest of this financial year and indeed into the next financial year.
Okay. Can we just note this and move on? Or is anybody bursting to say anything? Councillor Brooks.
I've got my yellow hand up and I'm waving like crazy. And
yeah, go ahead.
I just wave without hand. Councillor Doherty tells me off. If
yeah, no, that
you don't notice it. I don't.
No, that's fine. I was just taking it from what your leader said. You wouldn't have any comments. So go ahead.
I'd sort of returned to something I said in the executive meeting to Councillor McKinnon, but with a little bit of amplification. At the moment, we're looking at a £1.5 million underspend as a forecast for year end at the half year. And I personally think it will be quite a lot more than that. Bear in mind, that's a half year forecast for the year end position. There's been a history in the last quarter, Chairman, of a lot more sort of underspend coming through. Certain people on this call know who they are, where that suddenly grew. And therefore, I wouldn't mind betting, Councillor McKinnon, that this underspend figure will be nearer to 3 million. He may not want to take the bet, but I certainly think the council will end up at the end of the year with a very strong financial position, because as I said on the executive meeting, there are reserve funds, risk reserves, 815k. We found out on the executive meeting, just for adult social care. That clearly won't be called upon, so that could be rolled over or adapted or whatever. I really think it's to be, look, there is no way this is a criticism. If this council comes out with a financially strong position at the end of this financial year, that is to be, I won't say applauded, because the executive and the Conservative administration wouldn't expect me to use a word like that, but it is good for the residents of West Berkshire when we see quite a few local authorities up and down the country really struggling. And when I say quite a few, many. But what I'm getting at here is I think that £1.5 million position is undercooked. And I will be watching forecasts very closely during the course of this year. We have to get better at this. So I put that to Councillor McKinnon. He will be, we're only a few months away, as you say, Chairman. We're probably only 2 or 3 months away from year end. In fact, we are. And when we get the underspend, which come out around about May, June, I think it'll be considerably more than 1.5 million. And that would suggest to me our forecasting isn't quite as good as it could be. That's a long way of saying I'm watching forecasting very carefully.
Yeah.
Thank you for letting me, Chairman.
It may also be a way of saying that the central government has given us quite a number of funds to help us manage through the crisis.
What did you know from that, Chairman? Yeah.
It's okay. Yeah, just give credit where it's due. That was all.
I don't know about credit, but
Interesting.
I acknowledge it.
Sorry?
I don't know about credit, but I acknowledge it, Chairman.
I've just one little point, Joseph. Appendix A on page 144 of our pack. The net position we've got, I take it that 1.4, I'd say 1.5 is against our revised budget, not the original budget, correct? Okay. Therefore, against the original budget, it's more like 2.5. Yeah.
Yes, but there's some other amendments that go through there, Chairman.
Yes, I know there are. I know there are. It's very difficult. It's in most years it's difficult to keep track of them when you know. I remember adult social care or children's services or highways that managed to pull grants out of the air halfway through the year and the budget goes up. This one's particularly difficult because we've got a lot of special one-off grants from government and a lot of our income's gone down as well on various things. It is difficult. I just want to clarify that. I looked at it and it didn't jump out on me, but I thought that figure was in fact against the revised budget, not against the original. And you've confirmed that. Thank you. That was it. Can we just note that too, as we're asked to do, and move on? Everyone, yes, yeah, note. Okay, fine. Thank you.
I mean, yeah. Sorry, Chair. Can we note it? But just your addition is a valid one in terms of what you're measuring your baseline against every time. And so if in future reports we can have the year start position versus the quarterly forecast variation.
They do actually have this on that Appendix A.
Oh, I know. I'm just pulling it out again, just for the top
they
level.
Do have it, and I was just clarifying what the other side of the page was at the very end, bottom right. Okay.
Mr. Chairman, if I may, just looking at the Appendix A as you just referenced, what would be useful is in the revised budgets 2020-2021, if it referenced the quarter it was revised in. So if we had original budget at the beginning of the year and the revision based on whichever quarter it was done, at least we know exactly when it happened.
Yeah, we should have. It would be nice. It would be nice, Ross, Joseph, to have a little commentary in there about the revisions. We just have an overall number at the end, and it would be nice to say whether it's by quarter or not. But it should be each quarter. During this last quarter, we got an extra 500,000 of this. And we lost an extra a bit of revenue, or we gained a little bit. Just what the revised budget is made up of, it would be handy to have commentary. Okay. Can we now move on? Thank you. On to the capital. Joseph, Ross, do you want to say anything about this?
Shall I do this one, Joseph, seeing as you went with revenue? Yeah, so again, very, very briefly, Chairman, thank you. Reasonably small changes in the overall context of the capital programme from quarter one. It was a £6 million increase in reprofiled projects. I know that it's, I'm sure many businesses and local authorities are the reason of COVID is used to explain a lot of things, and I guess committees like this might sometimes get frustrated when COVID is cited as reasons. But I can absolutely say for the capital programme that the delays caused by the COVID pandemic are absolutely the primary and majority reason for all of these. So transport projects are being delayed, educational maintenance projects are being delayed. So what we're seeing here is sadly yet more delays, but I would like to assure this committee and the public watching that these projects are not cancelled, they're merely delayed, and the programme will hopefully get back on track as soon as we're able to recover from this awful pandemic. Thanks.
Okay, thank you, Councillor. Anybody want to make any comments at all on the capital? Tony, Councillor Wiggers.
Thank you very much, Chairman. I just had my eyes drawn to paragraph 5.4b on page 152. Newbury Station car park project now not proceeding as originally planned. Is this part of the Market Street development? Are we talking about the same project that I'm thinking of? Because that's going pretty well. So could I just have a little bit more information about what this delay is? Or is it a delay or a change of spec or what?
Ross?
Yeah.
Joseph?
I think Joseph's got his hand up and Nick's coming in there, so we'll see what they say.
Okay, well, while we take Nick, we haven't heard from him all night. Nick. Go ahead, Nick.
Sorry, just trying to unmute myself, Chairman. It's not the Market Street project. It's the project on the other side of the railway, which is being done with GWR and LEP money. I don't know the specific reasons for the delay, Councillor Vickers, but it's not the Market Street project, which is broadly on time, as you say.
It didn't read as a delay. It read as a stoppage, didn't it? A full,
Yeah, either a stoppage or some sort of a plan.
Okay.
And it wasn't elaborating very much, if at all.
Could we just take an action on that, Gordon? Get a more definitive answer on that one.
There are some hands up. I think they may be answers.
Okay, Joseph.
Yeah, thank you very much, Chairman. No, sorry, just to correct on this one, it's actually a project where we had the opportunity to purchase a couple of the floors of the car park, which we've reviewed and were interested in, but the original landowners decided to take the opportunity to do so. So it was a bit of an investor save, potentially for us to run that car park rather than somebody else. But they've taken that opportunity, so it's not available to us anymore.
We're not back on the Market Street side, are we? It makes it sound as though it's a multi-story car park you're talking about.
Yes, it is.
No, but this project was on the other side of the river, on the other side of the railway. No?
No, it is the multi-story car park that is in the Market Street development.
Oh, okay.
We're looking at purchasing it.
Right.
Okay.
I understand now. Right.
So the question I have then, what's happening to the project on the other side of the railway station?
You have to read the next edition of Thomas the Tank Engine to find out.
I don't know anything about that. So that was intriguing. Yeah.
Because there was a project. Am I right in that, Nick? There was a project for the other side.
Yeah, there is a project on the other side, and my understanding is it's going ahead. The money is there.
Okay.
It's just the timing that may be there may be a slight delay due to COVID, I think, but no, it's still going ahead.
Yeah.
Okay.
Chairman, if I may, in the appendix A to this report, just the very last page, I think the project you're referring to is on there. It's an amber, and it slipped from May to August 2021. It's a GWR delay, so I think that might be the project you're referring to, and it's a delay of a few months.
Okay, fine. All right, thank you. Good. So that report's noted. Okay. Yeah. Good.
Sorry, Mr. Chairman.
Gareth.
I'd like to declare a conflict of interest on that point. Hence, I turned my camera off because as soon as you move on to railways, it's just, it's my day.
Exactly. Well done. Well done.
Call him the slim controller, Chairman.
No.
I'll get there eventually.
He's actually a project manager, Councillor.
Ah, the slim project manager. Yeah.
Okay.
Project lead officer, actually. What's
Yeah.
his name?
Yeah. We have only two items left. One of them is the forward plan for the council, and I'd just like to note that, if you don't mind. And the other one is then our own program. And I did have a quick word with Councillor Dillon and Gordon before the meeting. There's a few bits of slippage in this, and I think we need to revisit some of these events coming up in July and October, and maybe even in April. So I propose that the Vice Chairman and myself and Gordon, we get together and have a discussion on what we'd like to see amended in that program, and we'll take into account the forward program of the council while we're doing that. And we might then have to refer back to the leader, Councillor Doherty, if there's anything on that. But so we need to do that offline, and I'd like to get that done so that we can present our findings at the 9th of February. So Gordon, if you could set that meeting up with myself and Lee. That being done, that's it. Shall I call the meeting closed? And it's not been too bad, just under 2 hours, and it was a lively and useful debate. And I hope the public who were there enjoyed it.